The biting Texas wind screamed through the mesquite trees, carrying the sharp tang of blood and the faint cries of someone lost in the storm. Jack Harlan bolted upright in his isolated cabin, his calloused hand grabbing the old Remington revolver from under his pillow. Through the dust-streaked window, he spotted Harrah woman in ripped satin and lace, staggering across the barren plains like a specter from his darkest regrets. When she crumpled at his doorstep, her auburn hair fanning out against the red dirt like a spill of autumn leaves, he couldn't know this encounter would pit his hard-won solitude against a passion that threatened to unravel everything. But as those piercing blue eyes fluttered open and locked onto his, Jack Harlan saw his own reckoning reflected eyes that belonged to Victor Grant, the man who'd sworn to see him hang. Those were Grant's eyes, the eyes of his sworn enemy. What happens when mercy pulls you toward the one person who could destroy you? And from where are you hearing this tale unfold tonight? The relentless December gales on the Texas frontier don't offer second chances, and they damn sure don't erase old grudges. Neither did Jack Harlan, though he'd spent 6 years trying. His shack perched like a forgotten relic on the edge of the Panhandle, 50 miles west of Amarillo, with a law thinned out and a man's history could finally fade into the duster, so he believed. She was barely alive when he hauled her inside, her skin cold as river ice, lips tinged purple from the chill. The gunshot in her side had soaked through her fine riding gown, sapphire fabric that screamed high society and probably cost more than a year's wages for a cowhand. This wasn't some homesteader's kin caught in a dust storm. Jack had patched enough wounds his outlaw days to keep his grip steady, even on a woman whose soft features spoke of ballroom dances, not branding irons. As he sliced away the bloody cloth, exposing shoulders unmarked by toil, she stirred. "Please," her voice refined, laced with fear that twisted something deep in his gut. "They're after me. They'll kill us both if they catch up." "Who's after you?" Jack kept his tone even as he stanched the bleeding. Her eyes opened wide, those haunting blue eyes, and she murmured, "I can't say, but if you've got any kindness left, hide me." She passed out again, leaving Jack with a heap of questions and the nagging sense that trouble had just ridden in on the wind, dressed in silk and secrets. When she came 4 days later, she called herself Sarah Milsa Flat Out Lie, but one she delivered with the poise of a lady raised in luxury. Everything about her was polished, except the raw desperation in her gaze. "You pulled me from death's door," she said, propping herself up in his bed, the quilt slipping to reveal the elegant line of her neck. "How can I ever make it right?" Jack averted his eyes, stirring coffee that was already done. "No debt to settle. Heal up and head out. This ain't no place for refined types like you." But she didn't leave. Sarah Mills, or whoever she truly was, had a way of turning his rough-hewn life into something almost livable. She whipped up meals that tasted like home biscuits fluffy as clouds, stew rich with flavors he'd forgotten existed. She darned his shirts with nimble fingers that mesmerized him more than they ought to. And come evening, she'd read from a tattered novel she'd salvaged from her ordeal. "Hear this, Mr. Harlan," she said one night, her voice warm by the flickering lantern. "The road not taken looks real good now." "Robert Frost," Jack muttered, not lifting his head from the boot he was repairing. She paused, intrigued. "You know poetry?" "Used to," he replied, the words hanging heavy. "Before." Before what? That's when he should have sent her packing. Instead, he opened up about the books that once filled his saddlebags, the life before he turned recluse with bloodstains on his soul and shadows tailing him. She listened like his stories were gold, making him feel seen for the first time in years. It was risky, this pull toward her more lethal than any showdown he'd survived. "You're different from most men," she whispered, her gaze lingering on his weathered face, stirring embers he'd buried deep. "Is that a compliment or a curse, Sarah?" She smiled, and damn if it didn't light up the room like sunrise over the plains. "Haven't figured that out yet." But Jack had. He was tumbling headlong for a stranger whose true name he didn't know, and every gut instinct screamed that letting her would burn them both to ash. He just didn't grasp how prophetic that was. The locket slipped from her jacket like a guilty secret. Jack scooped it up, the silver glinting in the firelight, engraved with A. Grant, 1885. A. Grant, the name slammed into him like a freight train, draining the air from his lungs. In a flash, it clicked. The fancy attire, the educated drawl, those piercing blue eyes that had invaded his sleep. Amelia Grant, daughter of Victor Grant, the cattle baron whose boy Jack had gunned down 7 years back in a sunbaked street in Abilene. "You planning on coming clean anytime soon?" he growled. She froze in the doorway, fresh from tending the horse, dust still clinging to her hem. Her face paled as she eyed the locket in his fist. "Jack, I no more bull," he snapped, voice gravelly. "I've swallowed enough lies to last me." She slumped into the chair, hands shaking as she took the locket. When their fingers brushed, a spark jumped between them, even amid the betrayal. "I didn't know it was you at first," she whispered. "I was fleeing bleeding out in you. You were my lifeline." "From what?" The tale spilled out in jagged shards. Reginald Thorne, the oil tycoon who'd bartered for her hand to seal a deal merging empires and crushing every small rancher from Dallas to the border. Her frantic escape south toward Mexico, cut short by a bullet from her father's hired guns. "He sunk a fortune into this alliance," she said, tears carving paths down her cheeks. "If I bail, Thorne pulls out, and it ruins everything Dad's built, every worker, every family relying on our spreads. They'd all pay for my rebellion." Jack should have felt justified. This was Grant's kin, weeping in his hideout about messes that weren't his. But all he saw was a woman caged by forces bigger than her, mirroring his own trap from one fatal shootout that rewired his world. "Your brother," he said softly, "Luke. It wasn't cold-blooded. Fair draw. But he was liquored up, green. Still." Her voice a thread. "I know. You know, monster like Dad claims. A monster would have let the storm take me." She rose, silhouetted against the window in moonlight. Luke was wild, always bucking Dad's reins. The quiet between them stretched taut as a bowstring. "So now what?" Jack asked. "We both know this road leads nowhere good." Amelia turned, her eyes fierce and luminous. "What if it does? What if we bolt together? Running doesn't rewrite sins, Amelia. Don't erase what I took from your blood." "Maybe not." She stepped nearer, her scent of wildflowers hitting him like a drug. "But it could let us build something real." When she took his hand, he held on. When she pressed close, he didn't retreat. And when she tilted her face up, lips inviting, Jack Harlan surrendered to the storm he'd been dodging. The kiss started gently, a query in the dark. Then she sighed a sound of yielding, and it ignited. His arms circled her waist, drawing her in as she melted against him. She tasted like hope and hazard, like redemption wrapped in risk. "This is loco," he breathed against her mouth. "Then let's go loco," she replied, and the lantern's glow danced on her skin as she grinned. Beyond the walls, the wind wailed protests, but they tuned it out. Nights on the Texas plains drag on eternally, vast and unforgiving, forcing a man to reckon with his demons. But that night, in Amelia Grant's embrace, Jack found a heat that scorched away his regrets. She approached like a vision, her cotton shift glowing in the ember's light, every step a temptation. "You certain?" His voice husky with want and wariness. "I've never been sure," she said, easing onto the bed. "I'm done letting fear call the shots." Her fingers mapped the scar on his ribs, an ancient knife wound from his bounty-hunting days, and his pulse raced where she touched. "Tell me the story," she murmured, lips tracing the mark. "Saloon brawl in Fort Worth? 82. Thought he had the drop on me." Her hand wandered lower, finding another blemish. "And this?" "Rustler ambush." Barely walked away. He captured her hand, kissed it. "Amelia, you don't, I do." She cut him off with a kiss fierce as prairie fire. "I want every tale your scars tell. Let's make fresh ones." She was stunning the arch of her back in the dim light, her hair cascading like a waterfall over his pillow, the gasp she made as his lips explored her neck. But it was her gaze, seeing him as whole, not shattered, that broke him wide open. When she rose to meet him, nails raking his back, he was adrift. When she breathed his name like salvation, he was anchored. Afterward, limbs entwined in the moon's glow, her head on his chest, Jack realized love strikes unbidden fears, ruinous, unstoppable. "Penny for your thoughts," she yawned. "That I'm an idiot. Why? Falling for a woman out of my reach." She propped up, eyes earnest. "What if I'm already yours? What if love bends the rules?" Before he could respond, horses snorted outside. Amelia tensed, color fleeing her face. "They tracked me." Jack snatched his gun belt as peace shattered. "How many?" 15 at least. Dad plays for keeps." Through the cracks, lanterns bobbed like evil eyes, hoofbeats thundering closer with the clink of metal and leather-hard men circling like vultures. "The back door," Jack hissed, loading rounds. But Amelia shook her head. "No more running. I won't watch you bleed for my mess." "Amelia!" A voice thundered, echoing with ironclad command. "Harlan, I know you're harboring her. Hand her over, and maybe you breathe a bit longer." Victor Grant had arrived with a posse, guns gleaming under the stars. Jack peeked out. 18 riders and a noose around the shack, pros with itchy triggers and the swagger of the outnumbered never. "Last warning," Grant bellowed. "Send my girl out, or we torch the place with you both in it." Amelia joined him at the window. "Dad," she shouted, voice steady, "I'm done being your pawn." Silence fell, thicker than fog. Then Grant's reply iced over. "Always too headstrong, kid. But you'll learn. Thorne's waiting on that ring, and he'll get Itone way or another." That's when Jack knew escape meant blood. Some battles hunt you down, and the only shield for love is gambling it all. He kissed her hard, tasting salt and steel. Whatever goes down, loving you is worth the ride. Outside, shadows closed in. Inside, two foes turned lovers braced for hell. Dawn bled over the Texas horizon, staining the dusty ground crimson and amber. 18 armed men ringed the cabin, steam rising from their mounts in the crisp air, rifles aimed square at the door. At the heart sat Victor Grant on a massive bay horse, a man of 60 whose glare could cow a stampede ruler of vast cattle lands that stretched endlessly. "Amelia," his command boomed. "Enough games with this murderer. Time to head home." The door creaked open. Jack emerged first, hands up but eyes scanning like a hawk. Behind him, Amelia stepped out, head high despite her quaking knees. "Hello, Dad," she called, voice carrying clearly. Victor's expression flickered paternal worry, clashing with fury then hardened. "You look worn, girl. This is what consorting with killers brings." "This is freedom," Amelia shot back, something you'd never get. "Freedom?" Victor's laugh was barren. "You call shacking up with the scum who dropped your brother's freedom? You call gutting our legacy freedom? Luke's end was no murder, and you know it." "What I know," Victor growled low, "is that Thorne's poured $250,000 into our merger. Cash he wants repaid via your vows. Pull out, and it bankrupts every soul from here to Austin. That your idea of free watching good folks starve for your whims." The barb struck. Amelia blanched, doubt creeping in the same burden that spurred her flight, now chaining her back. "There's got to be another path," she faltered. "There is." A voice slithered from Victor's side as Reginald Thorne rode forward 55, paunchy but sharp-eyed as a viper. "Wed me clean, and I'll sweeten the pot. Your old man keeps most holdings, and hands stay employed." "Bulk," he shrugged. "Contracts bite back." Jack's blood boiled. "She ain't going with you buzzards." 18 barrels swiveled his way, hammers cocking like cracking knuckles. "You don't call shots, Harlan," Victor sneered. "Count yourself lucky for a farewell." "Maybe," Jack said coolly, "but I won't drop quiet. How many of your crew are you willing to bury for ego?" The standoff teetered on chaos's brink. Then Amelia strode between them. "Hold up," she commanded, eyes on all. "I've got a deal." "Amelia." "No," Jack began. "Hear me," she snapped, regal in the dawn. "Mr. Thorne, you crave grant access lands, herds, routes. What if you snag at Sans wedding bells?" Thorne leaned in. "Talk. A straight biz split. 55 to 45 your favor. Full access, plus cash for the hassle. And the funds." Thorne probed. Amelia's smile turned sly, Victor's own edge. "From Dad's coffers, naturally post my tragic demise." Murmurs rippled. "You want to die?" Victor gaped. "Disappear," she corrected. "Amelia Grant perishes in a flash flood, body lost to the Rio Grande. Winter floods claim plenty out here." Thorne nodded. "Slick. But him," pointing at Jack. "Loose end snag." "What loose end?" Amelia's tone was granite. "Jack Harlan buys at two-gun resisting. Shack raised in the fray. Frontier hazards." Jack got it. She was salvaging his hide by wiping the slate, letting them vanish as one. "Dad." Amelia softened, the child pleading. "Let me bow out gracefully. Let me pick my phantom." Victor eyed her long, spotting the steel he'd forged canny, bold, his spit and image. At last, he dipped his head. "Boys, this never happened. Amelia Grant and Jack Harlan bit the dust here days ago. Rest his mop up." 3 years on, in a fertile valley near Portland, Oregon, where the Pacific mist kissed the evergreens, a woman named Clara Ruiz watched from her cozy farmhouse porch as her husband, Miguel, broke a spirited mare in the paddock. He moved with that same steady grace, though his hair was cropped, face clean-shaven, hands smoothed by seasoned sand strife. To locals, he was a Spanish settler who'd wed a widow with prime acreage and big aspirations. No one pried. In Oregon, folks were reinventing themselves daily. The mail had brought a note that morning, scripted to Clara in familiar scrawl. Inside, in neat English, "Dearest Clara, the venture thrives." Thorne's content with his cut, though he gripes about his vanished fiancée now and then. "I spin tales of sorrow, softening elders. The crews praise the upgrades wealth tames, even tycoons. I recall you fondly. May the Northwest rains bless you. Your steadfast ally, V." Clara pocketed it near her heart, then strolled to Miguel, hand on the gentle swell of her womb where their babe stirred. "Word from back east?" he asked, eyes on the horse. "From a pal," she said, fence-leaning. "Deals are solid." Miguel nodded, grasping the unsaid. They'd torched their pasts in a Texas blaze, guilt and grief with them. What rose here was humbler, truer theirs alone. They grasped the frontier's harsh lesson. Sometimes you shed it all to uncover your core. Sometimes death births life. And sometimes love merits any toll-even rebirth as strangers. They were unbound, united, rooted, and that trumped empires of dirt and dollars. What did you think of this tale of forbidden love, betrayal, and bold escapes? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Whose side are you on? Jack and Amelia's rebellion or Victor's duty-bound empire? Share your stance, and let's debate.